Ooh. Hello, YouTubers! My name's Willie. Welcome to my channel. Today I have reaction request 126. And this is, again, that time to get back with the Beast Arises series from Arch Warhammer. This is part 5. And it has been requested by CJ Falcon. So, let's check this out. And play. Da 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 da. Greetings!
Salutations, friends, and welcome to an extra lore video. Today we will be taking a look at The Beast Arises. We have now gotten all the way to Book 5. I figured I'd do this as an extra, both because, one, I reached 100,000 subscribers just last weekend, and a double
that's a
dose
lot of
seemed,
subs.
Fitting. Additionally, I've already got a special lore video for Friday lined up to commemorate the whole 100,000 subs things, and as many of you have already guessed, it will be Imperial Knights, and it is going to be a rather beefy one. But for now, let's get into The Beast Arises Book 5, shall we? As you might remember from last time, Eldar had suddenly appeared on Holy Terra, 'cause why not? I mean, it's only the most heavily fortified and most holy planet in the entire goddamn Imperium. What could possibly go wrong with dumping a random bunch of Eldar on the planet?
Yeah.
What in goddamn deed? You see, the Eldar had had themselves a little bit of an idea. They too had noticed the rise of the Beast, and they figured they could maybe use the Imperium against the Beast, and more specifically, the Emperor. So they figured that the best way to get in touch with Big E was to fucking assault the palace.
Nice.
Eldar, not the smartest of aliens. So, they headed straight towards Big E's throne chamber while killing everything in their way, because brutally stabbing people is the best way to say friendship in the Eldar tongue. And the Eldar consider humans to be stupid. Ugh. And now, granted, even if the Eldars had tried to immediately surrender after boom tubing their goddamn way into the Imperial Palace, they'd still probably get shot. But what I'm saying is you probably shouldn't have just goddamn invaded the Imperial Palace to bloody begin with. Plus, it was apparently a rather costly venture. There appears to be multiple webways located on Terra, inside of the Imperial main city, and indeed the palace itself. We know of one that was opened by Magnus, which, well, led to a bit of problems. And apparently this is another, because this is not the same portal, quite obviously, because it didn't pop up in the goddamn Emperor's study. So, probably that's possible. Or the Beast Arises is just kind of pulling some bullshit out of its ass. That is also entirely possible. Nevertheless, several Eldar seers had to give up their lives in order to open this particular portal, through which a small band of harlequins slipped on a, well, I was about to say diplomatic mission, but if this is how the Eldars conduct diplomacy, I'd hate to see what they'd do if they tried to be as holy about it. So, the Harlequins are now running rampant in the basements and the cellars of the Imperial Palace, heading straight for Big E's throne room. As you can probably imagine, this pretty much occupied everyone's attention at the time. Granted, the High Lords were still panicking over the fact that an orc had just spoken to them and offered them peace terms, which, granted, is a traumatic event in and of itself. Grandmaster Vangarich, however, is a little bit more cool-headed and heads down into the Imperial Palace with Beast Cruel in tow to try and capture one of the Eldar. He sicks Cruel on one of them, but, Eldar Harlequins are pretty goddamn good fighters, and in fact it was even better than Cruel. And the Grandmaster had to intervene and kill the Eldar rather than capturing it, which, well, at least Cruel didn't get his head chopped off, so I guess it's a win in a way, but still. A live one would have been more preferable for the Officio
Just a bit.
Assassinatum, since they could then undoubtedly beat all kinds of lovely information out of him. Nevertheless, a lot of the Eldar actually managed to make it all the way to the Emperor's throne room, or to be more precise, the Golden Gates in front of it, which should tell you a fair bit about the palace's security. It's currently being staffed by Lucifer Blacks, and the Lucifer Blacks have been known as a fantastically good elite formation of bodyguards, and highly valued for their skills for thousands of years, but, well, it looks like their pedigree has waned somewhat, shall we say.
A little bit.
They sure as fuck couldn't stop the Eldar, which meant it was up to the Custodes to stop them. This, as far as I am aware, was the first time since the Heresy that the Custodes had engaged in outright combat with an external enemy since the Horus Heresy. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily, the Custodes were not, in fact, overly rusty, and they did manage to defeat the remaining Eldar. Fun note, the Emperor's throne room is guarded by a pair of Warhound Titans. I know that Big E's safety is, kind of paramount and important, but 2 Warhound Titans sounds almost like a tiny bit of overkill to me, but then again, they probably do look pretty goddamn awesome standing beside the massive golden gates leading into the throne itself.
There's a lot of
Luckily
nasty
for the
creatures
Imperium,
out
the
there,
Inquisition,
though.
and Vanquarich, somehow the Custodes managed to refrain themselves from smushing the head of one of the Eldar, even despite the fact that she had killed several Custodes. Quite the feat in and of its goddamn self, and one of them was captured and treated to the gentle administration of the Inquisition and the Officio Assassinarum. Oh, yes.
Nice.
My dislike for pointy-eared faggots is well known, and this, in my opinion, is a fate truly and honestly goddamn deserved. So, consider this. They had brought a token of Vulcan, the Primarch, to vouch for themselves. They never actually presented this token to everyone. Not the Custodes, not the Lucifer Blacks, not the Officio, not the Inquisition, not anyone. They decided they'd just break into Big E's throne room and, I don't know, show it to him maybe? I really don't know what the plan was.
It doesn't seem like a very wise
even if
plan.
the Emperor could take a break from fighting the forces of chaos and keeping the Astronomicon lit for long enough to check the Eldar's credentials, I think his response would be to anything the Eldar could possibly suggest, considering they were part of the cabal that pretty much destroyed the entire goddamn galaxy in the first place. Obviously, first and foremost, they brought Slaanesh into existence, which is sin enough for a lifetime, but they were also instrumental in turning the Alpha Legion against the Emperor. If anything, if Big E could drag his attention away from, preserving the goddamn galaxy for long enough to actually check the Eldar's little credentials, I'm pretty damn sure that the only words he would be willing to speak to the Eldar would be something along the lines of, "Fuck you." And that's only if he was being excessively generous. But here's the real thing. Okay, so the Eldar want to get in touch with the Imperium and tell them about the Orc threat. Alright. Was this really the best way to do it? Charging the Emperor's throne room. Couldn't you have, picked up a phone? I'm not even kidding here. Couldn't you literally just have called someone? Maybe sent a psychic message to one of the High Lords? Sent a carrier pigeon? A letter in a bottle? I don't know. Anything has got to be more effective than what they actually decided to do. Now, yes, granted, normally the Imperium is not particularly trusty of the Eldar, with excessively good reasons as well. But considering the fact that an Orc Death Star is currently hovering over their heads and an Orc ambassador just showed up and offered them to become his slaves, I'm pretty sure that if you literally just took a shuttle and flew it down to the planet while broadcasting over all Voxnets, "We come in peace, we're gonna help you with the angry greenskins," I'm pretty sure the High Lords would go, fuck it, what do we got to lose? Because, really, what do they have to lose at that point?
Not much.
But no, the pointy-eared little bastards decided to charge Big E's throne room and got them all killed, except for one which was indeed captured and taken to the Inquisitorial Fortress, where the little Eldar darling was put through various modes of enhanced interrogation. Although, of course, being an Eldar, she maintained a constant veneer of assholish dickishness, making damn sure that the people that was currently torturing her would hate her as much as humanly goddamn possible. It takes a certain amount of stupid, combined with a certain amount of arrogance and douchebagginess, to tell the people that are threatening to shove an expanding rod up your asshole to go fuck themselves. Nevertheless, the Inquisition has had plenty of practice, and they've acquired a fair bit of skills in the arts of ever-expanding anal probage, and eventually they did get a little bit of information out of the Xenos Eldar. Mainly is that they were trying to be diplomatic by invading the palace. Oddly enough, none of the people present simply just asked the Eldar, "Why? You could have just sent a telegram." But hey, I guess the author didn't really think of that. I don't know, really. Anyways, what they do know from this is that the Eldar do have a certain amount of intelligence. They also learned that the Mechanicus is apparently holding something from them, which in and of itself is not exactly news, but, you know, it helps. This is also a rather interesting little part, because Grand Master Vangarich suggests to the Inquisitorial representatives that perhaps their monolithic structure is why they're having so much internal strife and so much constant back and forth power struggles between the various Inquisitors. He suggests that they split into 3 various ordos that focus on their chosen field of study. This will eventually lead to the birth of the Ordo Xenos, Hereticus, and Malus, which is pretty damn cool, honestly. Nice little tidbit of lore there. Something good did come from this whole debacle, however. The Officio and the Inquisition have now bonded over their mutual love of torturing Eldar bitches. A fine thing to bond over, absolutely no doubt about that. Then they form essentially a bit of an alliance, trying to create a unified front, both against the Orcs and against the High Lords in all due technicality. They contact Courland, that has organized the Last Wall, and have arrived in the Terran system. However, the Last Wall is not quite what it was supposed to be.
Oh, yeah?
Anyways, before we get into that, the message they send to Courland is that he needs to demand the aid of Mars. Despite the fact that an Orc Death Star is currently hanging over Terra, Mars has done very little indeed. In fact, they haven't actually intervened in any real way so far. They haven't sent ships nor troops to aid Terra, and they have more or less refused or deflected all forms of communication. The Grand Master assumes that this is simply because Terra can't really enforce his will at the moment, what with the Orcs and everything, but Courland and his Last Wall just might, and indeed, he does manage to do so, and the Fabricator General acquiesces to his requests to send forces to aid the destruction of the Orc attack moon. As for this Last Wall, though, originally, it seems that the intent of Rogel Dawn was for this to be a safeguard, presumably against the return of chaos in all due probability, that would reforge the Legion as a whole, essentially recreating the Imperial Fist's Legion. What happened, however, was nowhere close to that. First and foremost, it was far, far too small. At the time at which the Last Wall arrived in the Terran system, it numbered no more than 5,000 Astartes. And while in normal times, that would be a pretty goddamn considerable force, especially considering they also brought along their naval contingents, but it's a damn far cry from the original strength of the Imperial Fists, which numbered well over 100,000 brothers, not to mention something along the lines of close to 100 capital ships, and of course the mighty Phalanx. And to complicate matters further, not only had the Legion not reformed in strength or numbers, but they just weren't the Legion of old. Black Templars had developed a very unique doctrine, a very unique culture, one might even say, compared to that of the Imperial Fists. And again, the Fists Exemplar had their own unique doctrines and cultures and understanding of what it meant to be an Adeptus Astartes. They could no longer be truly wielded as a single blade, which undoubtedly did weaken their overall efficiency and cohesion. Not to mention, they were all placed under the command of Kurland, who had proven himself and would continue to prove himself a very, very good commander, but still, at this point in time, he was, for all intents and purposes, untested. He was in command by simple virtue of being the only Imperial Fist living, which,
nice.
as you can probably imagine, did not exactly inspire a whole lot of confidence among his far more senior brothers. Nevertheless, patience was unfortunately not really an option. An Orc attack moon was hanging over Terra. Terra had thrown away most of its defenders, including the vast majority of its Imperial Guard regiments, quite a number of its civilians, and pretty much anything and everything that could be considered a ship. Granted, they were pretty much all unarmed merchant vessels, seeing as High Admiral Lansung's own ship had stayed back from the main assault, a decision that Kurland in particular was very, very interested in hearing the reasoning behind, as it did appear to be a rather cowardly act. Naturally, it had a pretty damn good reason. You know, you probably wouldn't want to throw away the only ship that could actually fight, but still, you know, for the Space Marines, that did seem like a rather cowardly decision. But still, they had to attack, and they had to attack now. With Mars promising its aid, it was time to move. Through a daring assault, including the attack of the fleet itself upon the attack moon, and several waves of Astartes invading the moon itself, they managed to disable the attack moon, and most importantly, the moon's teleportarum. This is quite interesting. You see, one person had survived the Proletarian Crusade. One had survived free until quickly being captured again and thrown in amongst the rest of the Orc slaves. The Orcs had quite a lot of human slaves. They had apparently visited a fair few little worlds. They were abhumans, sanctioned abhumans, but still, in all due reality, they were Imperial citizens, but they didn't quite look like humans. They were far taller and scrawnier looking, kinda birdish almost. Anyways, the Orcs have a teleportarum. That's pretty unusual. Orcs do have teleportation tech, but usually not this stable, reliable, or plentiful, so that's pretty goddamn unique. I mean, a teleportation device in and of itself, those things are rare. Ridiculously rare. And one reliable enough to constantly bring in reinforcements and supplies, which this one is. Essentially, the Orc attack moon is getting all of its supplies, all of its soldiers, ammunition, food, etc., through the teleportarum. That is unheard of. A teleportation device with enough range and stability to be used as a stable route of supplies? That is absolutely insane in the 41st millennium. Not to mention, it doesn't seem to be constantly malfunctioning and opening warp rifts in the middle of the Orc attack moon. Granted, that might very well have happened, and the Orcs would probably have seen the random invasions of demons as a bonus, but still, it does seem to be remarkably stable. And as far as we know in 40k fluff up until this point, a teleportation device like this is practically impossible. Even during the Dark Age of technology, nothing could really compare to this, so wow. Nevertheless, the Astartes managed to invade the attack moon and take over its internal workings, wipe out most of the Orcs, and take it under their control. For some mysterious reason, they didn't decide to just scuttle it, or at the very least destroy the teleportarum, or put it under permanent guard, which is rather odd, but I guess their close shave with death might have rattled them a bit, as it was a very, very close-run thing. The massive gravity weapons mounted on the Orc attack moon inflicted considerable casualties upon the Astartes fleet. In fact, it was only via the very, very timely intervention of the Iron Knights, another founding chapter of the Imperial Fists, that blindsided the attack moon and managed to knock out its main weapons, allowing the Astartes to board and purge the thing in the first place.
Huh.
It was uncomfortably close. And think of that. 5,000 Astartes and their naval contingents were just barely able to knock out this one attack moon. That's not very promising, is it? Regardless,
not
with the
really.
Orc attack moon disabled, at the very least for the time being, Kurland is forced to comply with his deal with Mars. One of the things he had to promise to make sure that they would actually send help, which in and of itself is suspect enough, is that they would be allowed to rummage around inside of the attack moon, which is the reason why they didn't destroy it. I still think they probably should have disabled and smashed pretty much everything they could find, especially the goddamn teleportation device, but oh well. After their glorious victory, the last wall is visited by the so-called Lord Guilliman. Not the Primarch, obviously, just the High Lord that bears that name. He boards the ship of the last wall and tries, incredibly enough, to politics his way into their ranks. The dude even attempts to intimidate half a dozen chapter masters to their face, and even goes so far as to threaten them. The sheer brass balls on this man would keep an entire Forge World operational for a year at least. Although, I have to say, this is one of those really odd things, right? This is one of the places where I feel like the Beast Rises books just kinda don't really get the lore. I mean, so, this dude, a mere human, wanders onto the ship of the last wall, faces down a dozen chapter masters, orders them to fall in line, even commands them to accept the command of himself and the Imperial Navy. He orders them directly to accept the direct authority of the Lord Militant, and him as the Lord Militant's master, which is unheard of. He insults them in the most blatant terms, and yet not a single one of these chapter masters decides to puppeteer the dude by simply ramming a mailed fist so far up his goddamn asshole that he can make his eyes wink by twitching his fingers. Which, I remind you, would be the Adeptus Astartes chapter-approved standard response to some cuntweasel wandering aboard your ship and ordering that you fall in line. And then, as one final insult, he demands that the chapters send numbers of their own brethren down to the planet with their armor painted in the colors of the Imperial Fists. Alright, where to begin?
What?
Well, they are a successor chapter. They have great amount of respect for Dorn and his legion, but Astartes take great pride in their heraldry, in their colors, in their iconography, and asking them to repaint their armor in the colors of another chapter?
Yeah.
I'm struggling for an analogy here, but it would be something along the lines of walking up to a person, just sitting at his breakfast table, just chilling, then pissing in his cornflakes while slapping him across the face, and when you're finished pissing in them, you turn around ever so daintily, drop your pants, and shit directly in the bowl, only to then turn around with a coquettish little smile and go, "Bon appetit." The simple fact that the Lord Guilliman's head is not currently orbiting Jupiter from the force of the punch that sent it there is downright unbelievable. Though, to be fair, one of the reasons why his head is not currently breaking the speed limit is because Kurland himself sees the political necessity in this action. He understands that if the people of the Imperium and the people of Terra specifically learned that the Imperial Fists were practically wiped out by the very orcs that just murdered their proletarian crusade, there is a teensy-weensy little chance that some of the civilians might have what is commonly referred to in military terms as a fucking freak-out. Which seems like a pretty goddamn reasonable prediction if you ask me. And so he as well asks that the chapters send a small number of their finest warriors to paint their armor in the colors of the Imperial Fists, so that Curlin may reform at least the Daylight Wall, the first wall that is usually stood sentry upon the walls of the Imperial Palace itself. Purely ceremonial in all due technicality, but again, the people need their heroes, and the Imperial Fists, to the people of Terra, are pretty much as close to living legends of the Great Crusade that they are ever likely to come. And so, despite the sheer bullshit of it all, the other chapter masters do indeed agree, seeing the political necessity of keeping Terra from, well, descending into complete and utter anarchy, essentially.
Yeah.
And of course, the High Lords, being the indulgent, wasteful motherfuckers that they are, fat, rich, angry, lazy, incompetent, etc., etc., they hold a massive victory feast and parade for their conquering heroes, and parade the newly founded First Wall through the streets of the Imperial City. And at the banquet, because it has to be used for something, Courland runs into a certain Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum. The two have an instant liking for one another, Courland recognizing a non-political ally that nevertheless knows how the politicking of the imperial capital works, and Vangerich, well, what he sees is a very, very, very large, very angry Astartes that has decided that he needs to step into the realms of politics himself. And while Curlin is a mighty good battlefield commander, he is rather naive in the ways of politics and might need a kind, gentle, guiding Grandmaster to inform his actions. The Grandmaster immediately stabs the High Lord of the Navy in the back and suggests to Curlin that all of the High Lords are corrupt and worthless in need of trimming, and points out that High Admiral Lansung's capital ship hung back while the Proletarian Crusade was butchered. Of course, he very carelessly forgets to mention that he was the one that told Lansung to not waste the only goddamn fighting ship in the entire fucking segmentum, but
nice
details, minor,
just
insignificant,
little details,
and entirely pointless
little
details. The rest of the High Lords treat their conquering heroes with, well, cold disdain almost. Granted, they try to cozy up to them on occasions when it's politically relevant, and they try to present them with a nice face, but you gotta remember, as far as the High Lords are concerned, the Imperial Fists are mere soldiers. In fact, many of them even see them as having almost a ceremonial role. Again, I remind you that the First Wall is supposed to stay on Terra at all times and protect the Imperial Palace.
Yeah.
For most of the High Lords, the Imperial Fists are simply just really, really big dudes standing in alcoves, you know, being guards. They don't have the respect for the Adeptus Astartes that they probably should have.
Yes.
And perhaps they will soon learn that the Silent Guardians might just be done with the whole silence thing. Meanwhile, in a completely different place in the Imperium, the Iron Warriors are currently getting butt-fucked by orcs, which would normally be a wonderful thing indeed, if it weren't for the fact that the Black Templars that were pursuing said Iron Warriors are also getting butt-fucked in the exact same way, since they were currently busy fighting each other when the Greenskins showed up.
Probably.
This obviously complicates things rather badly. The Iron Warriors have created a fortification down on the planet. The Black Templars dropped down to assault that fortification when the orcs arrived. The Black Templars find themselves in a rather unenviable position. The orcs on one side, the Iron Warriors on the other. It is at this point that the Iron Warriors suggest a truce, because they know as well that the moment the orcs are done with the Black Templars, they're going to come for them, and they're going to got no more chance to stand against them by themselves than the Black Templars do. To begin with, of course, the Templars disdain the very idea of an alliance with the traitors, but, interestingly enough, they eventually agree, which is odd. I gotta admit, this is, I didn't see this one happening. It seems, I mean, it's a alliance of, necessity, you might say, but the Black Templars in this fight also reveal their newfound faith. They have begun worshipping the Emperor as a god, and yet they throw in their lot with the Iron Warriors. I'm not sure how to feel about this. At one side, in the books, it is written as very much so a alliance of necessity, a temporary thing that the sides hate, but even then, I'm just not convinced this would happen, even in the face of a massive orc threat. I'm just not convinced this would be the case, but nevertheless, this is what happens. And let's talk a little bit about the Black Templars' faith before going on, shall we? So, the orcs are obviously throwing themselves at the bastions, which the Black Templars have been allowed inside now, and is currently being manned with Black Templars side by side with Iron Warriors. The Iron Warriors notice the newfound zeal and faith of the Black Templars, which at this point in the Imperium's history is still very, very unusual. Much of the masses have come to worship the Emperor, but the Astartes still see the whole God-Emperor thing as a little bit of a bad habit, a distasteful practice that they simply just find themselves having to tolerate. They do not accept it, they do not encourage it, and they most definitively do not approve. And yet, the Black Templars appear to have been the exception, having shown these faith and zealous attitudes quite early. In fact, it would appear, through various hints, that it might even have been one of the earliest things the Black Templars really accepted. In fact, it's even hinted at that maybe, just maybe, the Black Templars were formed out of a core of the Imperial Fists that had already begun to worship the Emperor. An interesting little idea, that. It'll be interesting to see if the Horus Heresy explores that any further, because I'd like to hear exactly how the tight-arsed Imperial Fists came to take upon themselves the faith and nonsense of the proletariat, so to say. It's going to be quite interesting. The Iron Warriors are very, very surprised by this newfound faith, unsurprisingly, and indeed one of them poses a rather interesting little question. He says, I'm quoting, "It would appear that Lorgar was but a bit too early in his devotions. If your Emperor could see you today," referring to the Black Templars, "would he let you kiss his hand, or smash your face in with a mailed fist as he did with Lorgar?" That is an interesting question. Would the Emperor accept the worship of the Astartes at this point? Was he ever planning to be worshipped? In the first place, was that part of his grand master plan? That is a really interesting one. Assuming that that was part of his plan, I don't think it is. And the reason I don't think that was part of his plan was because he rebuked Lorgar so ferociously. He censored him in full public, in front of his entire legion, his brothers. He sent the Ultramarines to chastise them. That is a very extreme action. It doesn't strike me as the actions of someone that wants to be worshipped eventually, but just not right now, you know? It seems
just a little extreme.
It's a very interesting question. Anyways, the combined forces of the Black Templars and the Iron Warriors managed to defeat the ravening Orc Horde and escape from the system. At this point, both forces are battered and bruised bloody. Not only have they been fighting each other, but also the Orcs. Neither force is in really any state to fight the other. Additionally, before the alliance was entered into, the Iron Warriors asked for several things. One, that the Black Templars help them, and therefore be allowed into their bastions. Two, that the Black Templars would not attack the Iron Warriors during the alliance. And three, that the Black Templars would allow the Iron Warriors to leave in peace. The Black Templars agreed to all of this, and, being the honourable warriors that they did, let the Iron Warriors go. But this will not be the last we hear of the Sons of Perturabo in this particular book series. But for now, we are going to end on not a cliffhanger. How nice! What has happened? Well, Tara's been saved. Curlin has returned, the conquering hero, at the head of 5,000 Astartes. The casualties will undoubtedly have reduced that number, but they have probably got at least 4,000 left. And with the reinforcements from the Iron Knights, they might even be back up to the full 5,000, or perhaps even stronger. They have now linked up with the Imperial Army elements on Terra, and the little Eldar nonsense which achieved, well, precisely dick, except for proving to the High Lords that the Eldar are bad, and they did give the Officio Assassinarum and the Inquisition something to ally over, which is useful enough in and of itself. Plus, there is that little trinket granted to the Eldar, specifically to the Farseer Eldred, by Primarch Vulcan. I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about the Lord of the Salamanders soon enough. Until then, however, I've been Arch. Thank you very much for listening, and I do hope to see you all again soon.
You too.
Have a good day.
Okay, well, that was The Beast Arises Part 5. Part of Arch's The Beast Arises series, where he goes explaining the lore of Warhammer 40k through the Beast Arises book series. If you want to go check out Arch's stuff, there is a link in the description to help you find it. Go check him out. He's got all sorts of awesome stuff. And this, again, was requested by CJ Falcon. It just keeps getting interesting. Strange that we didn't end on a cliffhanger on this one. Well, it sounds like pretty early into it we deal with the Eldar. One is actually captured, tortured, found out that it was supposed to be diplomatic. Then we have the Last Wall called in to attack the moon. The Astartes actually come out, and even though it was very small, they managed to whoop the moon's butt, and turned it over to Mars for their assistance, leaving the teleportation device open. And it's like, okay, so you didn't do anything to shut it off? This is how they were bringing supplies over. Yeah. They're bound to notice eventually that there's no new orders for supplies coming in. And then they'll send orcs. Apparently it's rather uncommon in the 40k universe for a teleportation device such as this to work so well. But it's like, it's not really the 40k, it's like the 31st. And so it's not long after, you know, there's still some highly working machines. There'd be more available at that time, I imagine. So it doesn't seem too far of a stretch. Of course, it might just be, it was brought up that it might just be artistic creativity on behalf of the book writers. You know, taking some liberties with the lore. The Black Templar ended up working with the Iron Warriors and succeeding for all intents and purposes. It introduced the religious side of the Black Templar, which the Iron Warriors found very interesting given the time that this is very odd for any Astartes to be so religiously devoted. Yeah, that's pretty much what I learned. My thoughts on it, well, it didn't really end with anything. There's the possibility of more moons coming. There's the possibility of more orcs coming. There's something about that teleportation device. There's the peace, the surrender offer given from that one orc. And there's these diplomatic, horribly planned Eldar diplomatic attempt to talk to the Emperor, which at this point I don't think he talks, not in a traditional sense. Sometimes I debate if it's not the warp, but you know, that's completely debatable. What else do I think about this? There's a bigger threat coming, it feels like, because they wiped out the moon, and we've got another book coming up. We've got the 6th, and is that it for the series? Interesting. Yeah. Book 6 is next, so we'll see what happens in it. Okay, now a subject that I found interesting that I've noticed. When you're watching this stuff, when you're reacting to it, you notice a lot of things about the subject, but you also notice a lot about the subject presenter. And I'm curious here because Arch almost seems obsessed with butts and poop and urinating and, well, butt fucking, and it's like, seriously? It just comes up a lot in his his lore videos, so I thought it was an interesting thing. Start that over. It seems that Arch is a little obsessed with butts and the physical removal of waste and the sexual means of messing around with butts. And so, you know, it's just something you notice when you listen to a person a lot. It comes up a lot. And yeah, like in this one it came up quite a bit, several times. So there's that. But on that note, I should probably go on to the next one. So, Willie, out.
If you like the video, stay tuned for more content. And as always, feel free to comment. Have a good one.